Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Chocolate with Nuts and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. Damn, number 5 already? These episodes are flying by. Fitting that perhaps the most iconic Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode, and yes, I know it's a highly contested title, is paired with another one of the most iconic episodes of this show, also known as my third favorite episode. Oops, was that a spoiler? As always, gonna say thank you to everyone who's been liking, watching, and commenting on my videos. Y'all are the best. Now, let's just get right into it. As I was saying in the intro, Chocolate with Nuts is in my top 5 episodes of the show. I typically put it as my number 3. Unlike my top 2, the third spot in my favorites ranking is a little more unsteady, but as of this moment, Chocolate with Nuts is my number 3. After all, it is the only episode of its score, which I'm sure you can guess. But enough with the teasing, let me get into this episode for real. Before I even begin looking at the content, I want to talk about how this episode is a really nostalgic one for me. And there's a few reasons for this. For one thing, ever since I was little, this episode has been one of my favorites, so obviously it has been rewatched many, many times. Secondly, this episode introduces, well, kind of, my favorite background character, Tom. Tom's character inspired some of the older online names I used to go by, like Ted, which was a mashup of Tom and Fred's names. So, fun fact on that. And the last reason that this episode is nostalgic for me is also the stupidest one, and that's because Chocolate with Nuts has been featured in multiple YouTube poops. Yes, I'm being serious. Y'all know I'm being serious. What can I say? I was a child with certain tastes. And besides, YouTube poops are actually funny. That is, when they're not being racist or homophobic or some other kind of bigoted, which is pretty common considering that they're the go-to for some of the kind of kids who valorize dark humor. You know, dark humor in quotes. Moving on with the real review, I can say with certainty that the beginning of Chocolate with Nuts is probably the slowest and least great part of it, other than the very beginning with the mailman gag, because that was actually hilarious. And an episode having a relatively slow start is almost always a good thing for the show, because that means that the rest of the episode can only get better from here. And let's be real, this beginning is great anyway, so if that's the worst of it, then shoot, the rest of the episode's going to be amazing. And really, the only reason I consider the beginning of this episode to be slow is because it needs to set up the plot, like the reasoning behind SpongeBob and Patrick selling chocolate, and it does that well. I love the bit about the swimming pool inside of a swimming pool, because that's exactly what rich people would do. If rich people don't spend their money on stupid shit, they die. Honestly, this part of the episode feels relatable to me, because I too look at rich people's houses for fun, knowing I'll never make that kind of money in my life. I also really like that SpongeBob and Patrick decided to sell chocolate bars. It feels very Girl Scout-esque, which carries another kind of element of nostalgia, I suppose. Though, I've learned lately that Girl Scouts support the US military-industrial complex. I wish I could be surprised by that, but I'm not. As the episode transitions to SpongeBob and Patrick's shenanigans selling chocolate bars, which makes up the bulk of Chocolate with Nuts, we're treated to lots of great gags and funny moments. I love SpongeBob and Patrick's spin on being door-to-door salesmen, from their attitudes to the inflections Tom Kenny and Bill Fagerbakke give the characters here. I'm thinking particularly of when SpongeBob's like, "Can I interest you in some chocolate?" Their first go at selling chocolate, where they sell to Tom, who, as we all know, starts shouting at the top of his lungs, is one of the most iconic of the episode. Though, does that word even hold any meaning when I can think of at least 4 of those moments in this one episode? Anyway, this episode really makes me want to eat chocolate right now. Damn. After the fiasco of Tom, SpongeBob and Patrick go next door, which leads to my favorite running gag of the episode, the scammer. First off, I gotta give kudos to D. Bradley Baker for his great, as always, voice work here. Because you can just feel the sliminess radiating off of this dude whenever he pulls a fast one on SpongeBob and Patrick. The scammer is just way too funny, and I love how unapologetically scummy he is, scamming the best friends not once, not twice, but 3 different times. Rule of threes, anyone? And I love how unexpected the last one is, too. This episode has such great writing. The first 2 scams are back-to-back, and then the last one is near the end to complete the rule of 3 while also making the audience kind of forget about the scammer dude so that they're surprised, too. And I think that makes the joke funnier. And speaking of recurring gags, I love that Tom keeps popping up every so often, which keeps SpongeBob and Patrick, and the audience by extension, on their toes. And since it seems like I'm talking about all the gags I want to today, I gotta talk about when Patrick takes the make the customer feel special thing a bit too far, which ends up creeping a prospective customer out, rightfully so. Personally, I would have done something much worse than slam the door on Patrick's eyeballs. Which, speaking of, I love the end of the scene where Patrick's like, "Nice place you got here," and the fish just looks mildly irritated. This episode also has a bunch of absurd turned adult jokes in it as well, which I love, because these jokes are examples of the dialogue humor I love to see. Let me give some examples. Firstly, we've got SpongeBob and Patrick at the diner with the whole "let's get naked," then "no, let's save that for when we're selling real estate" bit. And then later on, we've got SpongeBob talking about how barnacle chips aren't delicious, and then Patrick says, "not the way I use them," in a certain tone that makes this joke more open to adult interpretation. These jokes have just the perfect amount of suggestion and vagueness, allowing them to land very well. SpongeBob and Patrick get a real education in becoming burgeoning capitalists in this episode, shown by how they start to lie about their product. The whole montage of them telling increasingly outrageous lies is great, especially when it culminates with the return of our favorite scammer. SpongeBob and Patrick are too nice to be cutthroat businessmen. I'm telling you, like I've said over and over, I think somebody on this show is, let's say, airing out some grievances. And then, of course, we've got the amazing ending of the episode with the reappearance of Tom and his subsequent buying of all the chocolate. I love how he just had a giant pile of money on him, like a comedically sized pile of money. And we then, of course, get the ending stinger with Squidward finally getting to go to the fancy restaurant, only to see that SpongeBob and Patrick bought the whole thing out. Unnecessarily, I might add. To have a dinner date with the elderly mom and daughter. Man, this episode is packed full of recurring gags, or perhaps brick jokes, or maybe Chekhov's gags, or maybe simply callbacks. I don't know. Every TV trope I can think of. Obviously, I really, really love Chocolate with Nuts. It's a hilarious, engaging, and quick-witted episode. It's an example of the humor of SpongeBob SquarePants at some of its best. Out of my 3 favorite episodes in the show, this is probably the one that's most gag-heavy, though I suppose Krusty Krab training video could vie for that spot. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is Chocolate with Nuts is an episode with a very simple plot that leads to a big payoff in the jokes department. Just proof, once again, this show can do complex, and it can do simple, and it can do both of them very, very well. And so all of these reasons are why Chocolate with Nuts is being put in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.8 out of 10, earning its spot as my 3rd favorite episode of the show. Next up, we've got Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, which is an episode I love because of its use of our ensemble cast, or at least half of them. Out of the original 5 Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes, I'd say that this one is my favorite. Let's talk about it. So, let me just start by saying that I find the whole concept of this episode to be hilarious. Considering what we already know about Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy being parodies of most obviously Batman and Robin, among other characters, this plot is funny because of how DC has established Robin to be a child's role ever since they started having an actual continuity. It's funnier that Barnacle Boy is an old man in this role because of this, and honestly, throughout this whole episode, I'm rooting for Barnacle Boy because I too would definitely be over the little boy sidekick treatment, probably for much longer before this. And on that note, this episode low-key makes a good point about certain superhero names and how they make grown people seem like children. Supergirl, I'm looking at you. Though that's a whole separate conversation about misogyny. Anyway, this beginning part of the episode is so funny once Barnacle Boy declares that he's going to become a villain. The evil gags in this episode are hilarious. Like, it's truly a joke that never gets old. And I don't even mean the lemon thing just yet. Even more hilarious is when Barnacle Boy proclaims that he's going over to the dark side, only for there to quite literally be a dark side of the restaurant because Mr. Krabs is too cheap to light up the whole place. Utterly hilarious gag. And then I love the implication that Man Ray and Dirty Bubble were just chilling in a car on that dark side, waiting for someone to utter the word evil. It's the exact kind of hammy supervillain entrance that fits well in this parody. And with a ride like that, those villains are making me want to join them. Like, damn, what a hot rod. Then the episode presents us the classic maneuver of building up anticipation only to sweep the rug out from under us. And I say that fondly, when it turns out that the 3 villains are just doing the most pettiest crimes imaginable. Of course, this is also when we get the great and iconic "every villain is lemons" joke. Although, I will say that for a second there, I was about to say something other than lemons. I won't explain any more than that, though, because those who know will know, and those who don't, won't. Then we get to the really fun part of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, which is when everyone teams up and becomes superheroes. I love how Mr. Krabs only pops into the episode one last time to tell Squidward to join SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy, or he's fired. Honestly, one thing I feel was missing from this episode was Mr. Krabs. It would have been so fun to see him join in on the superhero thing too, but maybe the episode would have been too crowded for that to be the case. It's a possibility. But also, I think that Pressure did well having the same amount of characters in it. Well, I guess I had less characters since this episode has the addition of the geriatric duo, plus the villains and the Chief. Speaking of the Chief, or at least I will be in a minute, the DC parody only gets better once everyone gets their costumes from the IJLSA, which is, again, yet another parody name. I love the line from Mermaid Man about the powers being all in the costumes, because whenever Hollywood decides to make a live-action remake of some of these heroes, I'm always like, why the hell are they dressed like that? I know I'm kind of in the minority when it comes to comic fans, of which I barely count, but, like, for the most part, the realistic takes on comic book costumes, like, I like them. Though, there are some times when more comic inspiration would have been better. It's just, I get pulled out of the movie or show or whatever it is when the costume's too silly. That's why animation and comics are simply better mediums for these stories. That's what I'm deciding. But all of this is way beyond the point, so let me pull it back. I love all the little intros that everyone gets, which also showcase their new powers, because they're all really funny and a great demonstration of what each of them can do. This episode really leans into the campiness of the superhero genre, especially when it comes to the introduction of the Chief, who is a funny-ass character. And while we're here, I honestly cannot believe that SpongeBob SquarePants got away with the make-out reef joke, considering they didn't even have the distance of animation for that one. Whatever strings had to be pulled, I'm glad they were, because this joke is hilarious. And I'm surprised that Squidward managed to get any action at Make-Out Reef. But truly, it is diabolical that evil is harassing horny teenagers. Because yes, that's what they are. That's what all of this was implying. Moving on to the confrontation at Make-Out Reef, once again we see the writers and the voice actors having lots and lots of fun with this parody, with the catchphrases and insults and one-liners and whatnot. And everyone also gets a pretty cool entrance, which is actually one of my favorite tropes, by the way. I love a badass entrance. Of course, this is SpongeBob SquarePants, so it soon becomes clear that we need to expect the unexpected. Or perhaps this was expected, where we may have been anticipating a fight. What we get instead is everyone managing to completely fail at fighting the villains because of their lack of mastery with their powers. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is both realistic and comically exaggerated. Because yeah, no shit these guys wouldn't know what the hell they're doing, unless the suits also come with instant training, but also the way everyone manages to be almost absurdly incompetent is a bit ridiculous, but in the best way. And then Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5 pulls on our heartstrings for just a second when Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy make up, but not before making us laugh a little bit with the Dirty Bubble and Man Ray's dumbfounded reactions to Barnacle Boy's demands. It's cute that this episode resolves so nicely. I love how it's basically spoofing on the power of friendship, though it's less a spoof and more fully leaning into that trope. From here, we get to my favorite part of the episode, which is the ending. So, I actually have a lot of favorite tropes, and this episode has two of them. Firstly, I love a good everybody laughs ending, especially when the show does them. It's just a trope that makes me feel happy. Another kind of ending trope I like is a where are they now ending, which this episode also does as everyone laughs. It's like a 2-for-1 sale on tropes, it seems. And the Chief really helps make this ending even funnier for me. But again, just how did they get away with that? Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5 is just a really solid episode. Even though there is a 6th one of these, I personally like to count this one as the end of the specific saga because it's the last one of these episodes featuring these two characters that uses this specific style of title card. So it loses its cohesiveness in some way. Although, the 6th episode making a departure from this is actually smart given the subject matter of that episode, but that's me getting ahead of myself. Let me bring it back. This episode is a really good ending to this saga. Like, if the show had decided to stop using the characters of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy after this, I wouldn't have even been mad. But I'm glad they kept using them, even if they aren't my favorites. I also think that this episode is one of the ones that I have a newer appreciation for. I always considered it to be the best of the original 5, but it would typically fall into my great tier. I didn't really find the episode to be exceptional. But looking back at it now, there's just so many great and understated jokes in here, and the parody here is just so immaculate. And so Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5 deserves to be put in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9 out of 10. As always, gotta end with some closing thoughts of mine. Well, the first thought I have right now is about Season 3, just in general. Now that I've gotten through today's review, we've now officially covered my top 3 episodes of the show. Krusty Krab training video, Can You Spare a Dime, and Chocolate with Nuts. All these episodes are from Season 3, which just goes to show the sheer quality of this season, and we're only about halfway through it now. I suppose a pessimist could say that everything is all downhill from here since we've covered my top 3 episodes, but I don't see it that way. There's still plenty of great and excellent episodes from here. My top 3 are the only episodes I actually rank, so I'd say that there's still lots that could theoretically fall into a top 10 or top 20 or top whatever list, but I'll never make that list, so this is going to have to remain theoretical. And with that, I think that's just about everything I've got for y'all today, so I'm going to end the review here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.